Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, the Arizona Republic raises questions about the evacuation of Yarnell residents during last summer's deadly wildfire. We'll discuss last week's Corporation Commission ruling to add fees to new solar rooftop customers, and we'll hear from AAA on a decision by DPS to crack down on distracted driving. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Much of the fallout from last summer's Yarnell Hill fire focused on the deaths of 19 members of a hotshot firefighting crew. But an Arizona Republic investigation is looking at concerns over how the town of Yarnell was evacuated as the fire closed in. Joining us now from the Arizona Republic are reporters Ann Ryman and Sean Holstich. Good to have you both here. Thank you so much for joining us, and great work, by the way. It must have been an exhausting job here, just going through all the information. Let's start with some basics, though. Describe the evacuation efforts during that fire.
The evacuation efforts were very chaotic. I mean, all evacuations are chaotic to an extent, but this one really, the people had very little time to get out. They were told early on in the day, you know, you might have to evacuate, prepare to evacuate, but when the final evacuation order came out shortly after 4 o'clock, people were scrambling and people were leaving and fire was coming up to their homes.
Were the evacuations not early enough? Was that relatively clear from what you looked at?
Yeah, the fire experts that we talked to really thought that the evacuations should have been ordered sooner. The people should have had more time to get out. And keep in mind, most of Yarnell, a lot of them are senior citizens. So that even is more reason to give the people more time.
Boy, yeah, that really is a factor there. Fire department, 911 dispatchers, from your story, it sounds like there was a lot of confusion.
There was a lot of confusion, and it's common in these kind of experiences. Typically after a big fire, the reports will talk about lack of communication or lack of coordination or problems in the handoff of leadership. All of those things appeared evident from the 911 tapes. We would hear dispatchers coming in on their shift saying, hang on, I need to check, I'm not sure what's going on. Or dispatchers late in the day, you know, an hour after the evacuation, telling residents, oh no, you're on a 4-hour alert, standby. They themselves were unsure of what they were supposed to be telling the public.
Do we know why they were unsure?
No, we don't. Some of it is the chaotic nature of those experiences. I mean, you got to understand what a dispatch center is. There's all these people on the telephones dealing with calls, but also dealing with incoming information. It's all very loud and chaotic. Usually what will happen is they'll assign somebody to coordinate the messages, make sure everybody's on the same page. We don't know whether that happened or not, but the messages going out were unclear, and even the messages coming in were unclear. At one point, somebody called in and said, we've hit our trigger point, which is fire jargon for they've hit a critical decision point where they need to move out or evacuate. At first, the official said, this is the 1-hour notice for Yarnell, and then corrected himself, and it ultimately appeared to be the 4-hour notice. But they themselves were unsure as the thing unfolded.
And with that uncertainty, some residents were either confused, some residents never got the information?
They didn't. There was a reverse 911 system, and there was a lot of confusion about the system and misunderstanding on how it works. If you have a landline, you were automatically, you'd receive the calls, but if you had like a cell phone, you had to sign up specifically to get the message. So it really it was almost kind of like a grapevine where people were passing the information to each other. Sometimes it was accurate, sometimes it wasn't.
And sometimes the people that signed up and knew they were in the system didn't get a call anyway. We're not entirely sure why. And Yavapai County Sheriff's Office couldn't quantify that.
As well, an action plan regarding all this. The action plan was written the next day?
On the Monday, after the burnover of the hotshots, after the evacuation and the burning of Yarnell. Just to clarify for the viewers, in big fires, it's standard procedures to write a plan as you show up, and as events unfold, the commanders, the incident commanders, what they're called, will modify and amend that, and then hand that off to the next incident commander when there's a shift change or the fire escalates. That's the routine practice. It's a standard federal requirement, but this was a state fire. So they weren't required to do that, but it's a standard procedure. But they didn't do it in this case.
So who was in charge?
State Forestry.
State Forestry. Then go down the chain here. Yarnell Fire and Yavapai County, or Yavapai County?
Let me go in reverse. So
okay.
The fire breaks out with a lightning strike Friday evening or late afternoon. Yarnell Fire Department was the first on scene. They didn't respond because they couldn't get men up to the scene. There was some confusion initially whether it was state or BLM. It turned out it was state forestry. So they put on an incident commander who runs this thing through Saturday. Sunday morning, 10:30, another incident commander for state forestry takes over because the fire's escalated. And only after the burn over, and I forget the time now because we didn't focus on this, did the federal firefighters take over after the fact.
And with all of this going on, any injuries, any deaths because of or the lack of an evacuation?
There were 2 people who had minor injuries. This is probably the most dramatic story. A 63-year-old man and his 85-year-old cousin. They didn't have a car at the time, and they actually had to walk out while flames were coming at them. Embers are falling all over. They can only see 5 or 6 feet in front of them. And fortunately, somebody came along in a truck with emergency lights and picked them up. They still don't know who their mystery rescuer is.
Wow.
But they were saved. And
this goes
wow.
to the issue of procedures. One of the things our fire experts told us is why you have that plan is it sets in motion a chain of events in a logical fashion. Many states have what's called ready, steady, go for 1 hour, 4 hour, and immediate evacuation. In reverse, 410. There's supposed to be a chain of events where you decide, okay, now it's safe, now it's not. That didn't appear to happen, and as a result of that, the sheriff's deputies were themselves rushed. They're not supposed to knock doors if it's unsafe to them, but they are supposed to knock doors and blare bullhorns. None of that appeared to happen from anyone we talked to.
And yet, it sounds as though, from your story, the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office is saying, chaotic situation, fast-moving fire, everything worked as well as it could. Folks got their neighbors out, folks did some work on their own. What's the problem here?
They're using a measure of success that there weren't any deaths. And you know, to their credit, they were going through right after the evacuation order went out, and they were rushing through to try to reach as many residents as they could. Not everybody was able to get a knock on the door though, everybody got a call. There's some people that didn't.
And again, back to the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office and their response. It sounds like what they're saying, this is an awfully difficult situation. You've mentioned the chaos and how that has to factor in. All things considered, did they not do as well as possible?
By the measure of getting everybody out, they did as well as they could have done. The question is, could it have been more orderly, and could some of that chaos have been avoided? If you talk to the fire experts, one of my fire experts said something I didn't put in the print. He said, we have a lot of near misses. We're lucky we haven't had any direct hits, meaning
yes.
We're lucky that this chaos hasn't killed any civilians yet. And the reason why it can be more coordinated is because everybody talks about second guessing the fire, but they had all the evidence they needed on the Saturday to know how scary this fire would get, but they didn't seem to look at that evidence, is what the fire experts told us. And so as a result, we have this chaotic evacuation that could have been less chaotic.
Last question, what are you hearing from residents up there as far as how they thought the evacuation went, and now that they're reading your story and finding out a little bit more?
I would say that the chaos and the flaws that we wrote about is a common theme up there. A lot of people experience that. You know, we could only quote a fraction of the people that we talked to. There are many, many dramatic stories. Now, there are people that did decide to get out early, and they probably didn't have the same experience, but there were an awful lot of folks that were getting out at the last minute. Is
there dissatisfaction? Are they upset up there? Are they taking it as just this is an act of nature, an act of God? What are you hearing?
As far as the evacuation?
Yes.
No, they do feel that they should have had more notice.
All right, very good. Well, again, this is incredible work here, a great story. It's good to have you both here to help us make better sense of it. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Arizona Corporation Commission voted last week to increase fees to solar power customers by about $5 a month. APS says that's still not enough to offset an unsustainable cost shift from subsidized solar power users to non-solar customers. Pat Quinn is the director of the Residential Utility Consumer Office, a group that wound up being very much a part of this particular conversation. First of all, thank you for being here with us. Your thoughts on the Corporation Commission's ruling?
I think they did an outstanding job. They took an extremely complicated issue that had been made more complicated with all the sort of exterior things going on in the media and advertising and stuff, and they boiled it down to a fact that while one side, the solar industry, say there are no costs, and the utility APS said there's a ton of costs, I think they took a nice level approach that would allow solar to continue in the state and not really harm APS in the near run.
I think the solar industry is concerned, though, that this measured approach still starts a ball rolling, and once that ball gets rolling, it's going to go downhill and it's going to increase speed and mass. Is this just the beginning of more of this kind of conversation? Well,
it's the beginning because we're talking about rooftop solar is all we're talking about. There are many other forms of distributed generation out there, and one of the things that came out of this decision of the Commission is they're going to start another docket. And we're going to look at all the technologies that's out there. We're going to look at cost shifts. We're going to look at a lot of things before the next APS rate case, because this is sort of the tip of the iceberg, this net metering thing.
I know staff, Corporation Commission staff suggested waiting until that next APS rate case to kind of tackle this. Did you think that was a wise idea?
No.
Why?
If we could have had a rate case immediately, then I think it would have been a wise idea. But in the last APS settlement agreement, they were forbidden for coming in until 2015. So I didn't want any more of this to go on until 2015. Let's look at it. We think there are some issues. Let's at least put a mechanism in place that starts to cover some of those shifted costs.
And we should mention 70 cents per kilowatt per month fee added. That averages out, what, between $4 and $5
depends on the system.
A month, something along those lines. And this is current ratepayers and current folks that are having their solar panels installed right now grandfathered in?
They're grandfathered in, which is kind of confusing. The Commission in Arizona cannot set something for a future commission. A future commission can always change what a current commission has done. So they can't. So generally a grandfathering, we've had them in the past and it doesn't happen. If one commission grandfathers things like the 18,000 plus customers we have now, more than likely nothing will change for those going forward. Everybody that buys after January 1st though of 2014, that's not the case.
It's an extra $5 or so a month.
Or so whatever the size is their system.
What's the impact on solar lease agreements? First of all, explain those agreements, because that seems to confuse matters a bit here.
Well, there's many options on how you can get solar. One of the ones that are popular now, and probably mostly what's being sold, what they call zero down. So you as a homeowner put a system on your roof, you don't really pay anything except a monthly lease. Generally what the solar companies have told us is that they can save you about $5 to $10 a month that way. You may save $100 in electricity, but you may be paying a $90 lease. So you're looking at a $5 to $10 margin on that. But you don't have any upfront money out of your pocket either.
And that $5 to $10 margin then is taken up quite a bit by this new fee.
That's right.
Which is one of the reasons why the solar industry really, APS was looking at a much higher fee.
Like 10 times that.
Exactly. Were you surprised by the ruling?
No.
No.
I mean, if you looked at the five commissioners on Wednesday, they all put out what they wanted to do. And there was they were extremely varied. One commissioner wanted to put in the $50 plus a month. Another wanted a $20 fee, which was what we said that probably the true costs were a $20 a month cost, but we wanted to phase it in over time to give the solar industry a chance to change their models. And so three of the commissioners, the chairman, Commissioner Bob Burns, and Susan Bittersmith, theirs were all sort of centered around what we were talking about, and we thought there was a sweet spot there that we could combine some of those and make some changes.
The argument from APS is that basically if you have solar panels and you're selling electricity back to the grid, and I don't have solar panels, I have to wind up paying for infrastructure, the grid as it were, because you're not. Is that a viable argument? And if it is a viable argument, where in the world does it end? Because solar doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Well, here's the problem with all of this. It is a viable argument. You have the utility that is looking at historical costs. Let's take an example. If you have a baseball ticket, what is that baseball ticket worth today? Well, if you were the utility, you would say, I'm going to look at all my costs for the last 100 years, I'm going to average it, I'm going to do that, and I think it's worth $5. If you look at the solar energy, they're going to say, well, let's look at what that ticket's worth 30 years from now, and you may have a suite, and popcorn's more expensive, and I think it's $100. Well, neither one of those are really germane to the issue right now. We looked at it and said there are some benefits of solar, but there are not many yet. So what's going to happen over time is there should be more benefits of solar, but let's see when those benefits come. One of the true ones, if you can push out when you have to build the next power plant, that's a benefit to the non-solar ratepayers too.
So when APS says that the cost shift from solar users to non-solar customers cannot be sustained, and you're saying not necessarily?
Not necessarily. That's why we're going to do all of this in a rate case and some dockets before that. Their number is huge. Ours was not quite so huge. Ours was about 10% of theirs. And so it's a difference of time. Anytime you're going to go from a regulatory type environment to a different type environment, which this distributed generation is going to cause, there's a transition period. We wanted to make that as smooth as we could.
How closely is this case here in Arizona being watched around the country?
Just before I came, I actually read a story from Africa on it.
My goodness.
So it's being watched everywhere, and there's actually a conference in NARUC going on down in Florida. The National Association of Regulated Utility Commissioners are down there, and they were speaking about it down there today even. In fact, we had two good quotes, one from Moody's, which said this isn't as big a deal as everybody thinks, which we agree with. Think about it, it's 18,000 customers today, maybe it's 19,000 now. APS has over 1 million customers. So how much of a cost shift can there actually be today? Now when that number gets 10 times bigger and it's 200,000 people, then we have an issue.
Indeed, and that's why you have to wonder about what is the end game here?
The end game is we have to come up with a reasonable way over time to figure this out. So as we move to cover more of those costs that are shift, and there is a big disagreement on how much is shift, but as you cover those costs, more and more of those costs, there may be some benefits coming in from solar. Some of us, and I'm one of them, believe that down the road, I don't know how many years that is, there may be more benefits coming in from the solar side than there is cost shift. And so that should go to help than the non-solar customers.
We've talked about this on the program before, but you're looking at a model that's changing so fast that some folks are having trouble keeping up.
Yes, and regulatory is not a model that changes fast.
Yeah, well, all right. Thank you so much for making this clear for us. I know you were a big part of that discussion there, and thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
The Arizona Department of Public Safety is looking to crack down on distracted driving. This after a number of high-profile accidents involving motorists texting and otherwise using their cell phones while behind the wheel. Here to talk more about all this is Linda Gorman from AAA. Nice to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
What exactly is DPS planning to do?
Well, they recently announced that starting in January, they're going to crack down on people who text behind the wheel. What they're going to do is using an existing speeding statute that calls for people who are driving too fast or for conditions that are reasonable or prudent. So people who are driving too fast, basically, that allows them to apply basically text messaging to this statute. So the belief here is that there really is no safe speed to text and drive.
So if the law says you have to drive at a reasonable and prudent speed and you're texting, there is no reasonable and prudent speed while you're texting.
Exactly.
We still don't have it. Do we have a distracted anti-texting law or distracted driving law?
We don't have a specific law in Arizona that targets distracted driving. We do have a text messaging law in Phoenix and in Tucson, so that applies to those cities only. But we don't have, as you mentioned, we don't have a statewide ban, for instance, on texting while driving or distracted driving as a category.
The ordinances that are out there, what kind of enforcement numbers do you have, or do you have those numbers at all?
Well, it varies state by state. So if you look at, there are 41 states that have texting bans, for instance. So I think that shows, and we often hear that, well, is this enforceable? Can this be enforceable? And I think that the fact that we have so many states that have these types of laws in place is testament to the fact that it can be enforced. Not only that, but the fact that our own DPS is deciding that, enforcement is a reasonable measure to ensure or to try and curb this behavior from happening. And so AAA applauds that effort.
There was an accident back in the spring on I-8 involving a trucker apparently looking at his phone, and a DPS officer wound up being killed. It's a big factor, I would imagine, in this crackdown.
Well, I would imagine that is a factor, but the fact of the matter is that text messaging while driving is becoming a public health epidemic. There's no other way to look at it. In fact, if you look at 2011 numbers alone, almost 400,000 people who were driving or in vehicles were injured as a result of someone being distracted behind the wheel. And it's not just something it's not age discriminatory, but if you look at the numbers, it's even more startling when you look at our youngest and most inexperienced drivers as they engage in this behavior more than any other age group. So the fact of the matter is it's a very serious threat to our safety, and we're glad that someone is looking at this.
You mentioned an epidemic. I was wondering, with all this information out here and the obvious example and just common sense dictates that texting especially would just be so wrong. It's not decreasing at all? It's increasing?
Well, yes, mobile use remains widespread. I mean, more people than ever have mobile phones, and a recent poll conducted by the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety showed that as many as 1 in 3 adults admitted to using their phone behind the wheel to read a text message or read an email. And those are just people that admit to it.
Yeah.
So you know that it's something that people are definitely doing. And they also, despite this, they know that it's very dangerous. In that same poll, 90% said that they view text messaging or emailing while driving as a very serious threat to their safety. So the stats show that it's dangerous. They show that people do it, and we have all these tragic examples of what happens when people continue to engage in this behavior. So I think that really underscores the need that something needs to be done.
All right, so DPS is using this reasonable and prudent speed law to go ahead and crack down. I would imagine, obviously, it's DPS, so the freeways, the highways will be the main focus here.
Well, all of the roads that they patrol, yes. But we're hoping, and in addition to just the enforcement campaign, I think what's so important here is that this elevates the discussion and it keeps public discourse focused on such a critical issue. So it's very important that they're stepping forward, and as a leader in driver safety, we applaud them for doing so.
Are there areas where this kind of thing happens more often? Are there times of day in which, I know that you mentioned that age is not age discriminatory, you mentioned that, but are there little pockets of information where we can find out that?
No, unfortunately, the data doesn't show that a specific time of day, or the only thing that we do know for sure is that, or that's really one of the scariest things, is that the younger generation doesn't show any signs of putting their phones away. So that's why we think it's even especially important to make sure that our youngest and most experienced drivers don't use the phone while they drive. The first 1,000 miles of driving are the most dangerous, and so the more that we can do to minimize the phone while we're in the car, the better we are.
As far as progress on new state laws as opposed to city ordinance and such, what's going on out there?
Well, 41 states have enacted a text messaging ban that just applies to text messaging. Here in Arizona, as I mentioned, we don't have a ban. AAA has been a proponent for many years of a ban, but in addition to that, we have been lobbying for the past few years on a ban that would target new drivers, so a wireless ban for all new drivers, those who have their permit and then those who are are under the 6-month phase where they're driving unsupervised. For that reason, we believe that the first 1,000 miles are so critical that they need to focus on learning how to drive, become safer and better drivers.
You mentioned that most people that are surveyed on this say it's a bad thing, it shouldn't be stopped,
Yes.
don't do it, and they wind up doing it anyway.
They
As
do
far
it
as
anyway.
lawmakers are concerned, why has this not become a state law?
Well, it's a philosophical discussion. Some people believe that, you know, distractions are a broad category. I mean, there are a variety of issues, variety of behaviors that can be in a distracted driving law. But we believe, and the stats show, that really texting, reading an email, those types of things are the mother of all distractions. We know that every 2 seconds you take your eyes away from the road, it doubles your risk of crashing. So it's very important.
All right, well, very good. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And that is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.